Anyway, it's 8.5 minutes past 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. You are with the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. And Robert, I'll let you do the honours.
Well, yes, and the theme, there's a line in that song, I can't tell you why.
That's the name of the song, in fact. Not
yes,
just, yeah.
And how pertinent it is, because one of the issues that our next guest has decided that he's going to make a difference to the world after his own experiences. He is known as the Unbreakable Farmer. He is Warren Davies, and he's definitely a friend of the show. Warren, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Neil.
Morning, Warren. Lovely to have you here, and congratulations on the work you continue to do.
Oh no, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. That's something that I set out on that mission about 6.5, 7 years ago to create that awareness and education around mental health and well-being, and it's something that I'm really passionate about.
It's one of those things, though, I think, a bit like teaching or being in the priesthood or something like that. It's not something you do because you think it might be a good job. It's one of those things that's kind of gnawing inside, I suspect.
Yeah, it's not a job, it's a vocation, I suppose. It's just something that I'm really passionate about, and the more that I got into it and the more that I got to travel around Australia and share my story, the more passionate I become, because there's a lot of people out there that, just need that someone to have that conversation with, or just need some tools in their toolbox to be able to move forward. So it was it's just something that's evolved. Never ever thought that that's what I'd be doing. I never thought that I'd be sharing my story or travelling around Australia and speaking in communities that I'd never been to, but that's how it's all panned out.
And now the other good part about it, Warren, is you're not doing it on your own. Others are doing it. On Monday morning, I attended the gym, and good morning to Amanda Sotheby, who said, "Oh, Rob, you've got to go and see this movie. It's called Just a Farmer." Amanda herself off the land up around Ararat, very poignant to the making of the movie in that case. I went along to see the movie on Tuesday. I was so moved by it, I contacted you and said, "Hey, mate, have you seen this? We should talk about it." You hadn't, but you have now. It's a movie that was made for, I'm not quite sure why, but we're going to find out on Monday morning on my show On The Pulse when we interview the writer, star and producer of the movie, Leela McDougall. But it was a movie made about this exact situation, this mental health struggle for farmers, which has got some terrible statistics attached to it, which you're going around to working on. The movie, a really good tool to help others, but I suppose, Warren, in your work, it gives you an opportunity to help you with what you're doing as well.
Yeah, look, after a number of people had prompted me, and then your phone call to say, have I seen it? And then I looked it up, and I went into Shepparton and sat in the cinema by myself, which was probably something that we need to change. I sat there and watched it, and it was a very confronting movie. Not only, it resonated with my own story, but it also resonated with all the stories that I hear, in the communities that I, work around or work in and around Australia. And it's just it's a common theme that you hear time and time again, and it was so, I suppose, so well constructed the way the movie was made, that it touched on a lot of points, a lot of the challenges and the struggles that a lot of people face in rural, regional and remote Australia.
Now, I don't think I heard the name of... Did you name the film when you went past, or you talked about a movie?
No, just a Farmer. It's called.
I don't think you called it. I don't think you called that out. Yeah.
Anyway, it's I'm not quite sure where it's still on. It was at Reddings and Village in Geelong this week. I'm not quite sure whether it's still on, but you might be able to catch it on a DVD or something. I don't know where, but please look out for it. Just a Farmer. If you're in rural Australia, or even you enjoy a good story that tells a very important message, I encourage you all to go and see it. It is just superb. And look out for it in your cinemas close hand, please, and try and get along to see it.
I think it's if you look up, most cinemas have still got it on. I thought it had been in past. I was away speaking when it was launched on the 21st of March, but it was still in our cinemas, and it's coming to our local cinema as well in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's still around. So just keep your eye out for it. But it touches on so many great points, and starts those conversations. And it's part of my mission is about inspiring conversations around mental health and wellbeing, and particularly in those rural communities. And I think it does that, and it reiterates, some of those statistics that that you touched on, Neil, Rob. That there's one farmer every 10 days that dies by suicide, which is is terrible, and that's something that we need to really work on. And from the Norco and National Farmers Wellbeing Report that they produced last year, 45% of farmers that they surveyed have had thoughts of self-harm, and 30% of those farmers surveyed had attempted self-harm, and that's a scary thought to think of that out in regional and rural communities. And one of the things that was also highlighted in that report was 27% of those people surveyed were feeling loneliness and isolation, and that wasn't just geographical isolation either. They were just feeling lonely, and a lot of that comes from the lack of services in rural and regional communities that they can tap into.
So a question that's often, and I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Warren, and it's very clear that people in the farming community have this terrible statistic hanging over them. But the thing I haven't quite got my head around yet is a lot of occupations and jobs that people do. I think of truck drivers, for example, who are isolated and spending a lot of time by themselves. Is it the isolation? Is it the type of work? Is there any statistics or research into why specifically people in the farming industry?
There probably is, but I suppose it's not something that you can pinpoint. But I think one of the things, and I'm not saying that just farmers are the one. Like, I'm doing a bit of work this year with the transport industry, speaking at a Victorian conference in a couple of months, and it's around the same sort of thing, the same thing that they're dealing with. And one of the things, from my own personal story, that isolation, it gives you a lot of think time. And if you've got some struggles or some challenges that you're thinking about, or, whether that's financial pressures or emotional pressures or whatever it is, you've got a lot of think time. And if your thought patterns aren't in a good place, that just can exacerbate in those hours of isolation. So, I don't think it's just, every industry has its challenges, particularly around mental health, and we're talking, and this is a rural-based one, we're talking about vets, we're talking about doctors and nurses and, people in the military and truck drivers. Everyone, there's statistics that are shameful in all, really, we really all should have a good think about it, some of the statistics that in every one of those industries. So it's not just farmers, but this obviously, a lot of the work that I do predominantly around, the rural and regional communities, and I was a farmer myself, so this really resonated with me. And I think off the top, just the movie title, Just a Farmer, I think a lot of farmers think that as well. They're just a farmer, and there's so much more to being a farmer than just a farmer. And sometimes that I suppose that all-encompassing nature of your work, it's not just your job, it's not just your home, it's where your family lives, it's your passion, it's everything all tied up into one thing. And one of the things that, particularly with myself, your identity is attached so strongly to your job. You don't get a chance to switch off. You live there, you work there, everything's there, and it becomes all overwhelming at some stages. And one of the things that really shone through to me in the movie, and it was how I was feeling at when I was at my lowest, was that financial, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And that's that shone through in this movie as well.
Yeah, it did. It was a key moment. It also highlighted. There's a couple of things come out of what you just said, and we'll deal with the first one first. Is that a lot of people think that it's just financial, that farmers get themselves in debt and don't see way out. But there's so many other pieces around it. The frustration we've touched on the loneliness. You're doing it on your own. There's no one to share it with, and then of course you exacerbate that by not utilising the tools that are around you, and it might be a neighbour, another farmer who's going through the same issues, or even you're reluctant to talk to your family about it because you don't want to burden them. That would be the reasoning, I suppose. So it just all remains internal. And I was speaking to a work colleague this week about this issue of a work colleague who lives on their own, and they take frustrations from work home and they don't have anyone to vent with. So they build them up and build them up and build them up, and only little things almost irrelevant, but it brings back that issue. You're on your own, and that's that feeling. You've got no one to share it with, and all the frustrations build up because of that.
And I think one of the things that was highlighted in the movie was around that financial burden of farming and debt and all that sort of stuff. But I suppose the key issue was it wasn't discussed, and it was the burden was held by one person, and even though the burden was held across the whole family, it was by one person, and that just created more isolation and loneliness as well, which is another key message of that. We need to be talking with our support network, with the people around us, make sure everyone knows how you're feeling and how you're travelling.
I think it'd be interesting to know, and I don't expect you to have the answer to this question, Morris, is something that's pondering in my head. Prior to 2019, there was a lot of this, going on, obviously, because, things haven't changed. But then along came COVID, and the whole concept of isolation came home to roost a bit for people who lived in the suburbs and lived in towns like Geelong. And I went through COVID living by myself and not having any opportunity to share my experiences with my friends because I wasn't able to see them. Have we noticed anything has changed since COVID, in so much as it's more prevalent, less prevalent, people understand it better, people don't understand it? Have you got any insight to that?
I think people understand isolation a lot better because of COVID, and I think my personal opinion is we haven't even seen the shakedown of COVID yet. Rear its ugly head. That's still to come, and that'll be a generational thing, I think, with particularly with the kids that went through, especially those older kids in high school that went through year 10, 11 and 12 through COVID, the impact that's going to have on them for the generation. It's I don't think that's going to shake out for a few years yet. That's just my personal opinion, but I think everyone got a better idea of what isolation was like. But even isolation in COVID, being isolated on a farm seems to be different. I grew up in the suburbs of Melbourne and then moved to the country. I've experienced both kind of lives, and that isolation, and I think it's just that internal isolation where who do I talk to now, because all this stuff's going on, and it was highlighted in the movie that there was more than one thing going on, and you had to pick up on that. So there was the financial pressure, there was also the operational pressure of the farm, sleep deprivation, constant work, all that sort of stuff. You just had to keep going, and it's one of the things I talk about in my talks about that word resilience that most people in rural communities hate being used these days. But being resilient, is dusting yourself off and keep going. But sometimes it's not. It's born out of it's not so much a character trait, but born out of lack of other options, and you just have to keep going, or you stop, and and that can be really detrimental to your mental health if you're you're being resilient, but you're not looking after your own well-being at the same time.
Now, folks, we're talking to Warren Davies. He's the Unbreakable farmer. We're talking about a very important issue. At the conclusion of our conversation in 5 or 10 minutes, we will be providing you with the telephone numbers of a couple of important organisations that you may want to talk to if this has triggered anything for you. So please get something to write with and on so that we can give you that information at the end of the conversation. But just in terms of Just a Farmer, the film, it's currently showing at Village in Geelong. There's a 4:10 and a 6:20 p.m. Showing each day this week, and also at Reddings out at Warn Ponds at 9:45 a.m. in the premium cinema, if you don't mind, Rob. So you can actually go
premium.
You even put your feet up when you're there. So that's certainly showing around town.
Yeah, very important. Now, there's another issue that popped up in the movie that's important. We've talked about the pressure of the person feeling the pressure, but there's those around them, and a key moment in the movie when someone took themselves out of their comfort zone and provided support at a time where they noticed that it was needed. And quite often, sometimes we're reluctant to get involved to help, but sometimes just a conversation, cup of coffee, a caring phone call is enough to make a significant change. So those of us who are on the outside and feeling okay in our own world but noticing change in our friends is an important role for us to play there as well, Warren.
Yeah, and that's one of the, I suppose, most mental health awareness messaging is around reaching out for help. Like, if you're struggling, reach out for help. But and it takes a lot of courage to reach out for help. But it takes just as much courage to reach in and ask someone, are they okay? And, you know, a lot of us shy away from that conversation because we think we've got to have answers and advice and, you know, we've got to be able to have an action plan and all that. But most of the time, and, you know, just sitting and listening and, you know, like you said, having a cuppa or just being there and being that support is all that it takes. And that does take stepping out of your comfort zone. And in a couple of my workshops, I've got a section around, you know, having that courage to be able to identify someone struggling, one, and then two, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone to be able to support that person and be there for them. It's and that was something, you know, that changed the direction a little bit of that movie then, when that person was able to step in and, you know, offer that support. And then, you know, it kind of changed the conversation around what the wife was struggling with when her sister stepped in. So, you know, she was able then to have conversations with her kids. And, you know, and it's something that really resonated with me in that story. And it was said that, you know, we talked about offline, Rob, about, you know, the support of, you know, the people that supported, and then some of the people that you expected to support didn't, and then the conversation within the community and that. And I actually spoke in a community in central New South Wales late last year where the same conversation was had, where I was warned that there was, you know, kids coming along that they'd lost their dad to suicide, but they didn't know that. It was they'd been told that it was a farming accident, and that's sad, because that was, you know, it's you know, to not be able to be told that truth, and I think that come out in that conversation, in that part of the movie where that changed that conversation, and the wife was, well, the mother was able then to talk to her kids about what had gone on. That was, you know, as we said before we come on air, it was a fairly confronting movie, and, you know, I was, yeah, sitting there, yeah, I had tears in my eyes. It was, yeah, pretty confronting. So, you know, I warn anyone that goes, you're not going to come away totally
rainbows and lollipops.
Yeah, that's it. It's but it's real, and the bottom line is the conversations that I have with people around Australia, that was a real depiction of what goes on, and it happens in every community. You know, we lose 8 people a day in Australia to suicide. One farmer every 10 days. This happens in every community, and that ripple effect that happens within those communities is huge. And some communities don't recover, or they don't recover back to where they were. They recover in a different way, and it has a massive impact.
Yeah, and absolutely not to trivialise the issue at all, but it's an interesting parallel that I fell over and damaged my ankle quite badly in October last year. Turned up at work in a moon boot. Everyone goes, "You okay, mate?" "Yeah, fell over," and everyone's happy to chat about it. But if I was having a tough time of it, and someone said, "How are you, mate?" and I said, "Actually, not doing too well," people suddenly have an urge to go to the loo or make a coffee, or suddenly got a meeting to go to. It's that stigma thing, isn't it?
I think it goes back to that, we've got to have answers.
Absolutely.
If that's the case, we've got to have answers, and we've got to have an action plan, but you don't. Sometimes they they might have just needed to sit down with you and just have a chat. And I think that's, inspiring conversations is one of the key parts of my mission. And I think, that needs to change in every workplace, every organisation, every community, where people have got that kindness, that if they know there's someone struggling, they don't try to avoid it. And it's not, you're not going to get embroiled in something that you can't get out of, but just to have that kindness and be able to sit down and have that chat with that person could change their day. It could save their life. And it's just a simple conversation that could be only 10 minutes out of your day that could make that huge difference and send that person on a different path.
And this is one of my pet hobby horses in the corporate world, is we talk about human resources, we talk about workforce, we talk about full-time employees, we talk about the work, a whole stack of euphemisms for people. But at the end of the day, every single person that walks through that door is a person, and every single person has got their own issues to deal with.
That's it, and we've got to be more caring, compassionate to that. And obviously in business, there's targets and KPIs to meet and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, most businesses are revolve around humans, and we need to take more care of what that word means, human resources, and we need to take more care of them and make sure that these conversations or any conversations, or people feel comfortable to have any sort of conversation in their workplace, and at least have support people within their organisation that they can sit and talk with.
That's why we chop it back to HR. That way we don't have to talk about human.
Warren, you, like another friend of the show, Ian Cover, who is an ambassador for Cottage by the Sea, doing some good work for that wonderful organisation as well, which ironically was the major reason we thought we'd get you on to chat today. So what's happening down there coming up shortly?
Well, on the 1st of May, mate, we're having our annual Winter Warmers breakfast at the Captain's Room at GMHBA Stadium in Geelong. And again this year, our guest speaker is Paul Taylor, and Paul's just an amazing person that'll challenge your thinking a little bit, but he talks and will unpack topics around resilience and overcoming adversity and, real practical well-being tips. It's a great breakfast, like in the Captain's Room. It's a great venue. The proceeds from the breakfast go to Cottage by the Sea, which offers, and then will give us the ability to offer more inspiration, fun and opportunity to the thousands of kids that go through the cottage every year. But not only that, it's a great morning. There's businesses from all over the region that come along to that breakfast, so it's a great networking opportunity. And yeah, you mentioned Cove, and last year he put me on the spot last year with stuck the microphone in my face and got me to talk about a bit of the stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm sure that'll happen again this year. But he's a great bloke to have on your team, Cove, and he does a great job. He's emceeing the morning, so sure there'll be a lot of laughs and fun along the way as well.
Amazing to be able to get the microphone off, Cove. Good morning, Cove. You'll be listening. Warren, we have to get going. Always great to chat to you, and the message you've got is a critically important one. We should acknowledge someone who sent through a text who didn't sign their name, but it said, great podcast by the Unbreakable Farmer, advocating for mental health, sharing people's stories and overcoming challenges in our community. He provides a powerful voice to kick the stigma. So make sure you check out the podcast. We promised you a couple of telephone numbers. Beyond Blue, 1300 22 4636. That's Beyond Blue, 1300 22 4636. Lifeline, you can call them on 13 11 14. That's 13 11 14. And you can even text them if you don't want to have a conversation with someone you feel more comfortable behind the keyboard. 0477 13 11 14. 0477 13 11 14. Warren Davies, the Unbreakable Farmer, thanks for coming on the show, and no doubt again we'll talk to you sometime during the year. No,
it'll be fantastic, and enjoy the show and enjoy being involved. So thanks, fellas, and have a good rest of your morning.
Thanks,
on you, Warren. Best wishes.
Warren Davies, the Unbreakable Farmer. You can find everything you want to know about him on his Facebook page as well.